Hi, welcome to the next tutorial on Flutter Junction. In this tutorial, we are going to discuss GetX in Flutter, how to use it, and we are going to perform HTTP request, and then we manage the state of our application with GetX. And this is how our final application shall be looking. And when we restart it again, we can see the circular progress indicator here. And when the data is loaded, we are going to show the items into the list. So this is how our final application shall be looking, and for that we are going to use some packages. One is the get our state management tool, and other is the HTTP, so that we can perform our HTTP request. And you need to add these dependencies into the popsec.yaml file. Here the popsec.yaml file, and then the dependencies, and then here I already have added the dependencies. And after adding this dependency, let's get back to our topic, right? And first let's discuss how our API shall be looking. And this is our endpoint, and then this is our JSON. As you can see here, we have page, per page, total pages, and the data. We are not going to use these pages, per page, total. We are only going to get the data tag, data from this data, and then we are going to show these items, this email, first name, last name, and avatar into our list. And we are only going to perform the action on this data. And after with this JSON, first we are going to create the model. And for that, let's get back to our project, and then inside lib folder we are going to create the model folder, and then the file user model.tar. And this is how our model class will be looking. We have the class user model with the ID, email, first name, last name, and we have the constructor here and the other construction from JSON. As our data is coming in the form of JSON, it takes the JSON data, and then it returns the object, so that we can get the data into our UI with dot operator. And after the user model, we need to fetch the data from the server, and then we need to update the state of our application. So for that, let's create the new folder, name controller, and then the new file, let's say user underscore controller.tar. And before working on controller, let's discuss how the GetX architecture will work. And this is the GetX working mechanism. We have model, view, and controller. It follows the MVC pattern. And whenever our view is loading, or we have the view, it calls the controller, which is containing our variables with the data. And when the data is not present, and with the function, it make the request to the model. And when the model gets the data, it returns the response to our controller. And when the controller gets the data, it changes the state of the variable, that means our data. And when the data is changed, then it changes the state of the our variable, and then it notifies that, hey, your data is ready, now you can update. So this is the how the GetX works. Now let's get back to our project. Okay, here we create the class named user controller that extends the GetX controller. Okay, and this GetX controller is coming from get, you can see here. And this GetX controller takes care of all your logic and makes your field observable. And now we create the variables. First would be our user list, our data, and this is array dot, and this obvious is used to make our this variable reactive. Let's import the user model, and then the other variable is loading. That means the loading, to show our loading indicator when the data is loading, and first it is true. And now we create the method get users, where we are going to get our data, and it is going to be async because it returns the future. And first we need to have our endpoint that we have already discussed. This is our endpoint of the API. So let's make it const. All right, and after we are going to call the get method from the HTTP, and for that final response equals wait HTTP dot get URI dot parse our endpoint URL, user URL, and we need to import the HTTP from HTTP, and we have import our HTTP, and the error should be gone now. And after getting the response, now we check if the response is okay or not. And for that, if response dot status code is equals 200, that means our result is okay. We are going to perform some actions here, and then when we don't have the data, or we got the error when fetching the data, we are going to show the snack bar that is provided by the get library. Let's close this. Okay, now it is visible, and this get provides us the snack bar. It is coming from the get library, you can see here. And whenever we get the error, we are going to show the snack bar with the message snack bar error loading data server response status code, and then the reason phrase. Okay, now let's handle when our data is okay, response is okay. And for that, first we decode our response dot body, and then we only get the data from our API. You can see here, this is the data. We are going to get this data, and then we assign it to our new variable. Let's take it result, and after that we need to get the list of objects of this result. So for that, here what actually happening is here we have the result coming from our JSON decode. We are only getting the data, and then we are mapping our result, and then we are getting the each item, and then we are converting it into the object, and then after all this iteration is completed, we are converting it into the list of user model, and then we are assigning into the variable our user list to our value. And when the after assigning the value to our variable, now we change the loading dot value to false. That means we have our data loaded. Okay, it is showing the error. Okay, this should be obvious. It is not observable, it is not reactive, so it's showing the error, and the error should be gone now. And when we got the data, and we are setting we are changing our variables data, and then we update our app, and this notifies that our value has changed, and we have our data, or we have our error message. And after working on this GetX controller, we need to call this get users from our init. Whenever this user controller is loaded, we need to call this method so that we can get the user from this endpoint. And so for that, we need to call this on init method from the GetX controller. And here we are overriding the on init method, and we have the super, and then we are calling the get user methods from here. Okay, after the user controller, now let's go back to our home page, the dart file. And before creating our home page, let's discuss how the GetX architecture will be working. So this is how the GetX architecture would work, and it follows the MVC pattern. That means model, view, and controller. We have model, view, and controller, and whenever the view is loaded, and it calls the controller with the function, and after getting the request, after getting the request from the view, and it sends a request message to the model, and whenever the model gets the data, it gives the value to the controller. The response is comes to the controller, and whenever the response is okay, then our data or our state would change, and after changing the data, then this observable will update the data to our view. So this is how the GetX works. Now let's get back to our project again. Right, now we create the new folder name, let's say screens, and here we create new homepage.dart file. Okay, and then we are going to create the stateless widget here and name it homepage, and then remove this and then import the material. And we can make this, okay, it is being the stateful widget, we don't need the stateful widget. Let's make it stateless. Okay, homepage, because our state is going to be handled by our GetX, so we are not going to make our homepage stateful. And there are 3 ways so that you can make this you can get this controller into the home page. One is you can just extend the GetX here by you can remove the stateless widget and then get view, and then our user controller. We need to import the get user controller also, and then the get view also. Right, and the error should be gone now, and you can get the access to this user controller by directly extending it with get view, or you can create the bindings so that you can inject it into the screens, or you can just make it stateless. Let's make it stateless now, and then inside the build method we need to call our controller, and here we are calling our controller. Let's close this. Okay, we have the controller, and we are get.put user controller and our controller function, and then we return scaffold bar of title text GetX demo. Let's make it const. Okay, now body, and to make our body our widget reactive, we need to call obvious for GetX, and then it takes the builder method. This shouldn't be here, it should be here after closing the app bar, and then returning the method from here, and then when our controller dot is loading, that value equals true, we are going to show our circular progress indicator center child circular progress indicator. Whenever our is loading value is true, we are going to show this circular progress indicator, and whenever our data is loaded, we are going to just return container here now. Okay, here what is happening is we are calling the objects, so it is listening to our controller, and then we are returning the method, and then here we are checking if our loading is true or not. If our loading value is true, we are showing the circular progress indicator, else we are showing our container. Okay, now moving on. Now let's assign these items to the list view, and before that let's create the new variable that takes the list of user model. Let's say user list equals let's import the user model first, controller dot user list. Here we are assigning the user list to our new variable user list, and then we are going to use them into our list view dot builder. Now let's remove this container and then create our list view. Here we have the list view dot builder. We have the item count of user list at length. That means this user list that length, and then we have the item builder that takes the padding. Inside the padding we have the card, and we have the list style that takes the first name and the last name here, and then it has the subtitle of email as you can see here, and then in the leading we have the circular avatar. And after all this, now it's time to run our app. And before running our app, let's call our home page to our main.dart file, and let's do some cleaning first, right? And then remove this and then call our home page. Okay, this should work now. Now we run our application. Flutter run, and we have our app installed. And we have our circular progress indicator working, and then we are getting the list of data loaded. And now you can also follow the other method to get this controller bindings to initialize the controller. And for that you need to create the new file in the lib folder. I would say controller underscore bindings dot. Here we are going to create the bindings. Let's create the class controller bindings that extends bindings. We need to and it needs to override the dependencies, and then here we get output our user controller, and we can also define the type user controller here, and then in the main.dart file we need to wrap it with get material app. Let's import the get from here, our library, and then into the initial bindings we need to call that controller binding, and we are ready to go. And then when you run the application again, it should work as before. You can see it's working fine. Now restart it again. And it is loading, and then we have the data loaded. And to check the error, okay, let's get back to our controller, user controller, and then okay, let's remove some part of the endpoint and then restart it again. And we can see here we have error loading data. We have the snack bar showing that is displayed, that is called from here. And when we change it again and then restart it, we shall have our application working, and it is working fine as before. So in this tutorial we have learned how to fetch API using GetX, and then we are managing the state of our variables. And so what actually is happening here, whenever we come, first the main method is called, and then the my app, and then we have this bindings here, and in the bindings we have initialize our controller, and then whenever home page is called, we are getting this, we are calling this user controller from here in our from our build method. And from the build method, first our on init method is called, that is coming from this GetX controller, and on init we are calling this get users method. And whenever we get the data from the server, we are assigning the value to our these variables, and then we are updating and notifying to our home page. And whenever the data is loaded, we are making the assigning the user list to our new variables. It doesn't matter, you can just use this controller.user list here and work, but it would be a bit lengthy, so I just assign it to the new variable. You can work as per your own. Okay, and then we are assigning these items to our list view.builder. Right, after that you can play it around with by clicking these items and passing the data to the next page. And if you got any queries regarding this video, you can ping me and comment, or you can mail me at flutterjunction@gmail.com. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment and share it with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed the channel, don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon. And you can find all these packages and links into the description below with the full code. Please find it. And you can now find us on the website also, on the flutterjunction.com. You can also follow us here. Here you can find the complete written documentation of the application. Here you can see this is the documentation of our current tutorial. You can find it and you can read as per your own. Right, now thank you, have a good day.